forest.
Okay.
Hey,
Basically
I'm gonna
cover
need
the
immediate
logo,
feedback on
the big
what
roof,
Nate's
the
voice
flathead,
sounds like.
the,
He's
regional office,
Skyping,
aerial fire
Skyping?
depot,
Yeah.
live
Missoula
feed
Technology
from
Development Center,
North Dakota,
Park.
and his voice.
We do all the purchasing for them.
Nice.
And this
So
summer,
go to your events.
I was going all summer
Oh,
fires.
I can only imagine.
Okay.
Yeah, I started off in April. We were in Florida.
Nate, you still there?
And
Yeah, I'm still here.
April,
Okay, just wanted to make sure we had you connected.
We were in
Wow, that
Florida,
looks good,
and,
sis.
Okay.
May was kind of slow, and then
He's on a
June we were
discussion
I want a French
slide
Colorado.
question page. He's not seeing. Hold on, let's say that again. One sec. Say that again.
I have to. Yeah, I'm live right now.
Session is closed. Gotcha. The live feed is on the actual event, and the event is the Be Polite, Don't Tailgate. So you actually have to go to your Facebook Live event. Okay, sweet. Okay, so go ahead and refresh your page. You'll be able to see us. I'm going to refresh this as well.
Can I have that?
Yeah.
Will that mess it up?
Nope.
Do you see it? Nate.
Yes.
Is that closed then?
Can you hear that person that just responded when I said Nate?
So I've got mostly kids who for a lifetime and subject.
There's a little bit of a gap there.
It's a huge gap with video live too. So
Creative plan.
I may have to post a new. Oh no, we're still good. Perfect. All right, cool. Well, we're ready.
Can you hear the person coming out of the speaker?
A lot of people are saying they're having a hard time hearing.
All right, you might want to turn the whole thing up a little bit,
No.
or maybe just Nate. But he could hear him, but he couldn't. Okay. All right. We will talk to you later.
He's got it.
So I assume I could probably try and speak slowly.
Yeah, please speak slowly and clear as possible, Nate.
Where's my screen?
You're gonna have to drag that over to that big screen. I think you gotta do it from the top of that one. So go to the top of that screen.
What? Up here?
Right there, yeah. Left click drag. And then you can.
We just do it?
Yeah, of course. You know, it's kind of interesting because you don't want to do that to somebody and
Great.
be rude.
Yeah, this here is what you do.
All right.
All right, it's 8 o'clock. I do believe we're live.
All right.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Good. Good. Thanks for joining all the way from the Dakotas.
Oh, thanks for having me. I wish I was there in person, but I'm just glad to be a part of it tonight.
My name is Lorian Sasek. I'm a native Montanan. I'm a Missoulian. I'm a mother. I'm honored to moderate the first of many discussions starting tonight. Our hope.
Someone says she can't hear.
It's
Can't
what
hear.
it is. I mean, you can talk louder, love. You can try, but
Our hope is that all of us, participants and observers, can acknowledge the fundamental rights of all humans to possess their opinion, be more willing to truly listen to the thoughts and beliefs underlying those opinions. We want to create an environment where people may disagree and do so respectfully. Ultimately, come together as a community, sharing a common goal of growth. We have an amazing panel tonight. I'd like to ask each of them to introduce themselves now. Start with J. Tom.
hello, everyone. J. Tom Simpson here. I'm a proud father. Been in Montana since 2001. I came up from Southern California to attend the University of Montana. I'm here to discuss with my friends and family current events, my perspective on things, and how it all affects me. I'm still discovering how I identify politically. I believe in God. I speak from firsthand experiences, so I speak from my emotions first, rather than national averages or universal facts, so to say. I want to target the root to help us all improve and to grow. And I love to ask the question, why?
My name is Richard Buckup Thunder. I am a husband, a father, and a Lakota man. I graduated from Cornell University with an applied economics and management degree. I'm participating in this discussion in hopes of fostering civil discourse among the divided factions. I have watched how divisive these two topics we're discussing tonight, kneeling and the Confederate monuments, have been in the USA as of late. It seems that both sides would rather shout at each other rather than practice empathy. My hope is that we can take the time to actively listen to one another and grow as individuals and as communities.
My name is Eden Roberts. I am not a native Montanan. I have been here for 6 years. I moved up here following my fiance, who is a native Montanan and had moved away as an adult and wanted to return. I am originally from the South, Florida and South Carolina. I am also hoping that we can focus primarily on fostering effective dialogue amongst each other and amongst the community. For the benefit of my children and of my family and my friends and really of everybody, I think that what America is missing right now is the ability to listen to other people, particularly who have contrary opinions. So I'm hoping that this is something I can do to get more experience in listening, and hopefully we can model effective communication.
My name's Alex Markle. I'm a native Montanan, 24-year-old. I strongly believe that contrary to what the media and our increasingly reactionary culture says, the world's getting better every single day. We can continue to live in a binary state of awareness or choose to believe in nuance and context. I tend to seek information, not affirmation, and that's what I hope we can do today.
Hi, my name is Nathan Franklin. I'm 32 years old. I graduated from the University of Montana in 2009. I'm very proud to be a part of this panel discussion. I will be, my thoughts and opinions are becoming more from numbers, data, than facts. I'm going to try really hard this evening to keep my personal emotions out of it so as to deliver the clearest message possible. My goal tonight is to promote the virtue of active listening. I really believe that if we make the effort to really hear one another with our emotions off the table, we can start to chip away at this ball of social division that we see building in strength every day. Hopefully by the end of this, we will all be in a better place than when we started. That's what I truly hope for.
So it looks like that we're having some trouble with sound on here, and I think the only solution is either to set the phone down and have only sound and no video, or we can have video and no sound, because I think what the other suggestions were is that we can respectfully yell and just speak a little loud. So we can try to do that. Hopefully we can get some feedback to figure out if we can hear at all. Is it muted at all? Like, people are saying that they can't hear at all, or they just can't hear
Brianna
barely.
just said she can hear great on her phone.
Who?
Brianna just said she can hear great on her phone.
Oh.
They asked if I can move closer. I think
And that
moving
helped
closer
out?
and that helped, I think.
All right. Well, again, Sania, thank you very much for being our videographer tonight and volunteering to do that. We thank you for that a whole lot. And it looks like we're going to try to get a seat for you as well, so you don't have to stand all night long. So with that said, hopefully we have... Oh, I can hear. People can hear. People are hearing just fine.
Woo!
Perfect. All right. Well, we're back to you.
subjects. We will start the conversation with the Confederate monuments, and then we will move into athletes kneeling during the national anthem. Different opinions are encouraged. Name calling and threats will not be encouraged or welcomed. This discussion is private and is streamed live to this group. I'm going to start with Jayton with the Confederate monuments.
So, again, this all came about from the original panel discussion at the University of Montana, which was great. A large number of people who were speaking their opinion from a very historical and educational point of view. What I gathered from that was basically the inclination to bring it from a point of view from this generation, so to say, and people who have gone through this. So the question is, do Confederate monuments belong in public places? I believe no. I don't believe that they belong in public places. What I don't believe as well is that they should be torn down and removed and destroyed. I believe that they should be relocated into a place where they can be an educational centerpiece, or a place where we can learn first off, why they were even built in the first place, and what they represent. The Confederate monuments, that the information that I've read on it, and I even have a slide, if you want to go to that slide so our panelists can see as well, the next slide. This is actually the information which was printed on the monument in Helena. And I'm not going to read it here, but it does not address the whole reason that we had a Confederate army or that we had the Civil War. It just says the war was between people with two different ideas. But what is that idea? What were those two different ideas that had the North and the South fight? One of the largest battles, and again, I don't quote all these different numbers and things like that, but I do know that it was a huge battle between people in America. And that was due to the South wanting to keep the slaves and the North saying the slaves should be free. So I don't believe these Confederate monuments, which is nearly supporting that idea, or basically having this tribute to the soldiers of the Confederate Army out in public places where, if I'm traveling in Helena and my family's there and my daughter wants to know, hey, what's that? I tell her the history. But if somebody else doesn't have somebody to tell them the history and they just read that and they don't know what that is, and they find out, whoever it may be, whether it's somewhere else or Robert E. Lee or whatnot, and they look that up, all they see is some great American soldier who fought for the South. But no real reason of, they fought to try to keep slaves, which was wrong. And I firmly believe that the South lost, and they should have lost, because slavery should have been abolished, and we should not have that type of ideology out in public places to continue that kind of thought. But I do not believe they should be destroyed, because if we destroy that piece of history, we won't be able to speak to that again. So I'll open it up to the floor, and actually I'll let you continue that, Loft. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Is not destroyed, just replaced. Move somewhere else, museum, some kind of educational facility or something like that allow us to be able to teach the next generations in the place to come, so we can know what is wrong, know how America, where we moved from and where we're going to.
I have a question to pose to you then.
Yeah.
So ultimately, yes, it was about slavery. It also, in accordance with that, was about states' rights versus the federal rights. And so if the South had one, states could decide on their own a lot of things that a lot of people would like to see decide on their own.
do you separate that in your mind at all, or is it for you strictly about that one issue?
Well, I guess just addressing the question is just about that one issue. Be it because those Confederate monuments are in public places. There are a number of people who say, why not just revise the wording on there and call it for what it is. This was a war about slavery, among other things, but primarily about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And if that would have been established upon the building of these monuments, maybe we'd be having a different discussion, Maybe this wouldn't be the topic to talk about, or one of the topics. But even still, the separation between, or the opportunity to vote and establish state laws and federal laws, given that time of just after the Civil War and having minorities still fight for a vote, because even then it was still right after Jim Crow laws and segregation and all these other things that kept minorities from having any kind of impact in America's future. Those things will still have to be addressed as well.
Which brings us to this third slide, I believe.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex, you have something.
Yeah, I think yours is an interesting point because you bring up something that was kind of a side issue of the Civil War. I think that a lot of people would say Civil War is strictly about slavery, which it was.
It was primarily about slavery.
Primarily.
It wasn't only about slavery.
I believe in making a point, like in using analogous arguments, and I think one that I did, or an argument that I researched is about Nazi Germany. Did the Nazis only believe in killing Jews? No, they probably had other political ideologies and advancing modern science and things like that. We can say that like the reason Nazis were bad was because of what they did to the Jewish population. To piggyback on that, what they did with Nazi monuments was exactly what J-Tom proposed. They did not leave them up. They put them in museums. They didn't erase history, to completely forget it, because we should remember history and bad things that happened, because that's a part of where we are at today. And so I think that's a great point. It's like destroying them is probably not what we should do, but to remember what happened, yeah, put them in museums and things like that. And so I think that's an interesting correlation, is because like we've had these atrocities happen, and we can try to delete them from history and like forget about them completely, but I don't think that's productive, because history will repeat itself if you just completely forget about it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that is that so many people are now talking about, we see many things, many memes going around and things and postings and things like that. It leads me to believe that people really do want to just forget history and forget the bad, and say, forget the bad, move past it, and let's move forward. And something I wanted to bring to the group is how do we address that? And that'll probably lead into our further conversations and slides and things like that. But it really begs me to ask and to open up the discussion to how do we address history without beating it over and over and over, or having that hold it as a crutch, because I don't want it as a crutch. I haven't been raised to have history be a crutch. Slavery was abolished. We're not, nobody's a slave right now, but there are slave-like things that could be going on, or there are still discriminatory acts and hateful ways and things that are perceived as holding minorities back, that have stemmed from the actions of slavery in the past.
J-Ton, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump off the point you just made.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you, and I think there are two very important, and please tell me if my sound isn't coming through clearly. I think there are two very important factors to acknowledge here. The first being that after the Civil War was over, Confederate soldiers were brought back into the nation as American citizens. When it was over, and we were one nation again. So essentially, Confederate soldiers were repatriated as American citizens. That being said, years and years ago, long before the Civil Rights Movement, there were monuments erected. We'll use Gettysburg as an example. There are over 100
we have time for me to say one thing before we move on?
One quick thing, yes.
So, I think that the way that Germany has handled the Holocaust, if you go to Auschwitz, sort of what it is like, how it's presented, the way that you feel when you go there, the way that they present history, is something that we could do here in America with the institution of slavery. So I grew up in the South. My childhood was mostly spent in South Carolina, and we would go on educational trips to former slave plantations. I do not remember the experience being what I've been told Auschwitz is, that it's somber, and it's meant to truly be a reflection on history and a processing of, this is what happened here, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again because of the level of atrocities that were committed against human beings. So if we could do something like that with the monuments and really frame it in a way so that history is not forgotten, because history forgotten is likely history repeated, that's what I can do with them.
Before we move forward, I'm sorry. My sound, I can't hear everyone very well. It got very quiet. If something happened to your audio on that end, maybe something could be done. I'm trying everything on my end, but I could barely hear that last part.
Are you good? Are you hearing us clear now?
I can hear you, but it's very quiet, and all of my volume is up. I don't know if it's something on.
It's interesting that the only Confederate monument is on.
So yeah, I just got a message from a friend that she can't hear.
I think you did something that sounds a little better.
I think she actually bounced out because she can't hear.
Okay. Well, that sounds like it was everybody else was hearing it. Nate, can you still hear us?
It's a little quiet, but it's a little bit better. I'll just do a better job of listening.
Okay, so I think ultimately we need to all respectfully yell at each other.
All right.
We're going to move on to, and it's hard to move on because we could spend an hour and a half discussing the monuments alone. Yeah. Do you have something you'd like to add quickly?
No, because it wouldn't be quick.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on.
Nate, is it better?
Reason why.
Yeah, that's better. We'll work with that.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. We're going to discuss the kneeling. We're going to start with Richard. He's going to get us caught up to where we're at, how we got here, and what's going on. So, Richard, please.
Alright, so a brief overview of how we got to where it is now. The Kaepernick first started protesting, not by kneeling, but by sitting, and he did that in August of 14th and 20th of 2016, and during those first two times, it was never noticed by any media outlets, by anybody that he was sitting for the protest. It wasn't until August 26th, the third time he did this, that it was noticed that he was kneeling, and it was almost kind of an accident. It was like just a picture, and someone noticed that he was sitting, and that sort of sparked the conversation. It was after that on August 28th when Kaepernick made his first real public comments about why he was sitting, and it was basically police brutality, oppression of people of colors, and trying to give people a voice who don't have a platform. It had nothing to do with military, it had nothing to do with respect to the flag or just disrespect to the nation. He does have some comments where he does actually talk about the flag, that he doesn't want to honor the flag that has hurt people of color before, but that doesn't necessarily mean disrespect. So after the third time he sat, he spoke with Nate Boyer, who is a Green Beret, and he was a former long snapper of Seattle Seahawks. And it was from that conversation that he decided to kneel, because it was kneeling traditionally is seen as a form of respect. In football, and like when I was a kid playing football, basketball, or baseball, a lot of times our coaches would have a kneel when you're praying to whatever creator God you have. You tend to kneel. It's just a sign of respect for the most part. After the August 28th is basically when the message got subverted. It was, people initially didn't really want to listen to the message, which was about police brutality. From the get-go, people co-opted his message to be about disrespecting of the military, disrespecting of the flag, and disrespecting of the country. Basically, from that point on, a bunch of different people started kneeling in hope of helping Kaepernick spread his message, but it was always a war of words between the people who believed kneeling was about police brutality and about people who believed that it was just a blatant sign of disrespect. And that basically happened all the way through the 2016-2017 season. It ramped back up this year. September 22nd is the date mainly, and that's when Trump had his speech in Alabama where he called the players sons of bitches and said they should be fired. That was the second time the message was co-opted, and it wasn't I don't necessarily believe it was like intentional for Trump to co-opt the message, but basically after September 22nd, the message went from being about even disrespecting the flag to kind of the media and everyone took it. Trump is fighting with the NFL, and the NFL players are now fighting back. Even after the 22nd speech, the players then started talking about unity. Again, a far cry from police brutality, and every other reason that Kaepernick originally started kneeling. And really, from what I believe from all of this, and it's something that both sides should learn, is respect. The reason why he started kneeling was to show respect to the military, was to show respect to the nation. And people still can think that it's wrong. People can still think that it is disrespectful if they wish to. But at the very least, you should listen to the message behind why he is deciding to kneel. If you feel disrespected by kneeling, that is your right, and I could even come to understand why you would see it as disrespect, because the traditional thing is to stand. But moving beyond that, this person is kneeling for a reason, and to not listen to his reasoning for kneeling is also showing him disrespect, showing the message that he had disrespect. So where does it end, and where do both sides begin to listen to one another and figure out a way to kind of solve these issues? That is kind of where I would open it up to other people.
Thanks, Richard.
I think a couple things, and it's all right if anybody else want to talk first. I think a couple things. I think the question you had, to start it off is just where do we go from here? I don't know if we should address that right now, because there's another thing also that you said was, people who are kneeling could also see it as disrespect to them to disrespect their reason of kneeling. But it's not just one person. I mean, the whole reason of kneeling was to raise awareness for police brutality. And I was challenged on this recently, is that, well, police brutality isn't only toward minorities or black people. You're absolutely right. Police brutality is happening to all races, which means to all Americans, which is something we have to fix in America as a whole. And that's one thing I really want to make sure we draw our attention to, is to make sure that we are addressing these issues as a whole, because it's not just a black thing. Like, yeah, it's led by minorities, but we are all Americans, and we all suffer people who take advantage of their power. It just so happened that most of the people in power are the people in power.
Or what?
Are white. You know, I mean, they're white. So I guess I'm gonna throw that before we go to where we go from here. But I do want to throw that out, because I want to make sure that we are understanding that it's not just a police brutality issue with black people. It's a police brutality period. It's the ideology of what it is behind the injustice that's going on.
I mean, we could have a whole other conversation about the power and control dynamic between the police and the citizen. I mean, they are the police, and we are. An argument could be made morphing more and more into a police state, and so that is tough. I don't know if I want to talk about that, but in terms of what's next, maybe not where do we go, but what is next, we need to figure out a way for the people who feel like it's disrespectful to the flag or to the country to step outside that disrespect or set it to the side and focus on that. And I think what people keep going back to is Kaepernick's, I think, original statement was, I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. So his original statement, his intent is to raise awareness for police brutality. He made a statement that I'm choosing not to respect the flag and the country. So I have not served in the military. I have family members who have. I think that so I am an American. That's part of my identity. Maybe less of a part that I focus on for folks who are more invested, maybe through military service or for a variety of reasons. They associate more strongly with the symbol of the flag for their patriotism or their loyalty or for whatever reason. So they are having a greater response to that statement of the flag. And for whatever reason, they're unwilling to even respect what he has to say because of the disrespect he led with. Now, I think if they could see, he did reach out, he spoke with Nate Boyer, and he adjusted his position based off of that. So he listened and adjusted his respect level. But I think for whatever reason, that is not being given due credit.
Nate?
Nate Boyer. I'm Alex.
Oh, God. Nate! I knew I was going to do it at some point in the evening tonight. Alex, tell me what you got. What are your thoughts?
I have a slide coming up, so I'm not going to use any of my points there. I just
Okay.
want to touch on a couple things Richard said. And correct me if I used your words wrong. I tried to write them as you said them. But to humanize it for a second, you said he wouldn't honor a flag that represents him and his people. Something to that effect?
Wouldn't honor a flag that is shown disrespect.
Correct. So if I had said I'm not going to honor Jayton, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I mean any disrespect towards him. Wouldn't that kind of contradict itself? People would be like, wait, you don't honor him? You don't mean disrespect, but you don't honor him? It seems contradictory.
But a flag is not a person.
It's not, but to many people, it is something very valuable. It's something that represents them.
Right. But the flag means many different things. The flag represents a whole nation.
Correct.
And that nation encompasses so many different things, good and the bad. So when you say you don't honor a person because of the different things that person does, but you respect or whatever it may be, that's a whole different thing than just a symbol of a country.
It's an entity. It's like a sports team. If I care very deeply about a team, there's good and bad that come with them. If someone says something bad, that's the one that I'm not going to honor that. But I don't mean any disrespect. It seems contradictory. So I'll leave that. Maybe that's not a great analogy. But the other thing
No,
you
I
said,
like that. I think that's great, and
Well, let's
think
write it
that's
down
valuable.
and continue
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
We should touch
But
on that again at some
I
point.
mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
And you can't relate a flag to a person, and I can't relate a sports team to a flag.
not a great analogy maybe, but it's an entity that a lot of people hold value in. Just as you would a person, I think you may value something in life.
Okay.
His main takeaway was that I think we should all come away and be able to listen to each other. But I understand if you don't want to listen, if you feel disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to listen to something that causes you disrespect.
He's chomping. What do you
Oh, no, I wasn't.
Okay.
I honestly agree. I mean, if somebody, first off, I come with respect to something or somebody, and you disrespect me, somebody, I'll acknowledge that and go, hey, and that was disrespectful. I don't like that. And if you continue to do it, I'm no longer going to support you.
Tune you out.
I'm going to tune you out. I'm not going to listen to anything you got to say after that. So, I mean, and this is opening my eyes right now because I didn't think of it in a way of I represent or I support the flag so much that it represents this entity, and you disrespect what I feel is so prideful in my world, in my life, that you disrespect that I have nothing to do with you anymore. But again, that's your perspective. I mean, that perspective comes from many people who served in the military, many people who've come up with the flag and the flag treating them right.
Mm.
I have not grown up with the flag treating me right. So the flag has been disrespecting me all my life. All my life the flag has been disrespecting me. So when I kneel, I'm kneeling because I've been kneeling all my life. Honestly.
Nate?
Nate, you're sideways. Nate, you're sideways.
Did you pull over?
Oh, and then
Let me get back to the. Okay, but better.
Yeah.
we have a couple minutes left on this slide, guys.
You're wrapping this
Make it
up.
as brief. I'll make it as brief as I can. Yeah, I wanted to touch on one point on this slide. The question at the very end: how has it escalated where it is now? I think that can be summed up in a simple answer in that we live in a polarized nation. We are divided to our respective parties, and too many people have this finger in the ear motion whenever they hear something that contradicts their beliefs. No one really listened to Colin Kaepernick when he made statements why he was kneeling. Now, you don't have to like them, but if we're going to come together as one nation and end this polarization, it's very important that we listen and try to understand, especially when we don't agree. Now, Jayton, you just made a really interesting statement saying that that flag has been disrespecting you all your life. Now, I'm sure that you won't disagree with this, but that flag has provided you and everyone else in that room with opportunities, with some of the finest opportunities in the world. Okay, now that flag represents, like you said, it represents a nation. Now, as a nation, if we're going to be proud of our nation, just like the people we love, we have to take the bad with the good. We can't cherry pick and only stand up for our flag when things are going well for us. Because life isn't fair. Things aren't going to go well for us. Jayton, yeah, it's not hard to acknowledge. You've been oppressed in your life. Richard's sitting next to you. Richard, I'm sure you faced oppression in your life too. And I'm not afraid to tell you, I have experienced oppression in my life, not on the same level, but who's to quantify what level is worse? The point is that we're all victims, and the only way to better ourselves is not to point fingers. This flag oppresses me, that flag is the bad guy. The only way we're going to move forward is to own that victimization and look inward and try to be better people. Okay? Yeah, Jayton, I understand that the flag has disrespected you your whole life, but it's still a flag that represents the country you live in. And if we're going to remain here, we have to take the bad with the good and try to be the best people we can. I think I'm rambling, so I'll end it there.
Thank you. And we're going to move on. Alex is going to examine the effectiveness of this kneeling. And
My computer stopped working, but that's all right. So when we started planning this a while back, we talked about how it escalated to where it is now and is an appropriate platform. And I understand how it escalated, and I understood that it's appropriate. It's our First Amendment right, and I don't have strong feelings on the kneeling for the anthem, the protests. If that's what you want to choose to do, because that makes you feel, if that makes you happy to do that and to remove Confederate monuments and these things make people feel better, I have nothing wrong with that. But I'm big into results and data. I know Jayton speaks from the heart a lot, but I want to see facts and numbers behind these things, and I also want to see results. And so one of the things I asked was, is this an effective form? And to me, I came up with the question, what makes an effective protest? And to me, what makes an effective protest is a good leader, a clear goal, point and end, and an activity that doesn't infringe on someone else's values. And I'm not sure that all three of those things are met here. And I don't think that this is an effective protest because of those things. I think it's almost more divisive. And so I'll start with Kaepernick. He's not Martin Luther King. He doesn't go out and make speeches. He tends to tweet a lot. There are racist tweets that him and his girlfriend have sent out. Since he became in a relationship, that was actually when he started to become socially aware. He became a vegan. He became aware of Black Lives Matter. And I feel like he's very impressionable and uneducated just based on some of his remarks he made when he did speak. There was the Miami press conference where he wore a Fidel Castro t-shirt and semi-defended someone who is one of the most oppressive dictators of all time. I mean, he was ruthless to Cuban people, and he did it in Miami, which is like kind of deaf. I mean, huge Cuban population there, and you're going to defend Fidel Castro. Some of the other things, the cops are pig socks. Like that's not a statement. That's just disrespectful. The Michael Vick tweet. I don't know if you're aware of that. He tweeted out something about the definition of Stockholm Syndrome and Victor advice. Stockholm Syndrome is basically when you are kidnapped and you become affectionate towards your captor because you feel a sense of attachment to them. And then after that, Ray Lewis was about to get him a job with the Baltimore Ravens. His Black Lives Matter girlfriend, talk show host, sent out a tweet comparing Ray Lewis with his arm around the owner of the Ravens side by side with, have you guys seen the movie Django? The Samuel L. Jackson, the slave, was with his arm around Leonardo DiCaprio, who's the slave owner. And these statements, he's not going out and speaking a lot publicly, but these kind of veiled shots through social media, I don't think make him an effective leader. Martin Luther King went out and spoke. There were talks. It was peaceful protests. It wasn't cop socks. So I don't think he was a great person to get this thing off the ground. And that's kind of why my next point, it's become jumbled. Like we said, like it's progressed into all different things. It's taken on all these different heads. I don't know what the goal is. There was women's suffrage rights was we want to vote. There was segregation. We want to end segregation. But to say we want unity and equality and so we're going to protest this country, I'm not sure what the end goal is there and how you get there. We can say police brutality. We can say we don't like Trump. We can say unarmed killings. But, you know, Michael Bennett goes out and gets tackled in Las Vegas 2 weeks later, comes out. The facts aren't even line up with his story. All these things, it's become a movement of confused proportions to me. And I think that's one of the things that you need a clear goal. And my third point is that it's an activity that doesn't hurt others. And what Jayton said to me at one point was, maybe it doesn't have a clear point, but it's raising awareness. Mm-hmm. I said, that's a good point. Like, awareness is great. And so, I'm big on analogous arguments. So the best awareness campaign I could think of recently was the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. You dump water on your friends. A lot of people didn't even tweet out links to where you could send money, but it raised millions of dollars and had breakthrough in ALS. But I think the reason it was so effective as just an awareness campaign was because it didn't hurt anyone else. There was no in your face, like this is like something against you. This is me taking away from our country. It's a fun thing for everyone, and I don't think that's what this is. This was kneeling against something other people value. And I think that we want unity, but this seems to be causing more divisiveness than unity. I like the locked arms, but I don't even mind the kneeling, but I see why it offends people, and I don't think it's going to be that effective for those three reasons. So I'll open that up to anyone that wants to contradict that.
Or agree.
I agree. I agree with your position. I think it's ineffective because I do think that there's a lack of clearness around goals and what do you want. So yes, equality in treatment, reducing police brutality, but what does that actually mean? Does it mean more body cameras? Does it mean an increased equity prosecution, and that's training for district attorneys? Like, how are we going to reduce police brutality? When we talk about increasing divisiveness, when you're looking at protest movements, you don't succeed by overpowering your opponent. You succeed by gaining allies, by winning the middle ground, and by being able to mobilize people. A lot of us in America, we are raised with this fight back mentality. So there's a tactic used in motivational interviewing that's called rolling with resistance, because when you entrench in our position and batten down, and we're just going to stand here. And if you meet me head on, I'm just going to fight you more. So you don't meet people head on. And I feel like his first statement about that disrespected the flag just knocked people and knocked everybody hunkered down and said, that's it, I'm not even listening to you. So that's why I think it's ineffective. I think the initial approach was not really taken with a mind around how am I going to mobilize a movement to effectuate the change I want to see.
I have a question. There's a quote that I came across when I was studying up on this. And you proposed that he was protesting the country. He was protesting police brutality. And it has turned into protesting America. And there's a quote that I came across that I mentioned in one of our meetings at one point. That really it just sticks with me and I can't shake it. Is racism so American that to protest racism is to protest America? I don't think that to protest racism should equal protesting America. And because it had to do with the national anthem and what, so it was turned into that, which I think is unfortunate. And I also think, and as the moderator I'm speaking, I'm turning right now, but I also feel like this got totally blown out of what he ever anticipated it would become. I don't think that he ever thought that he would be the poster child for this protest. I think he quietly wanted to kneel, and
Nate Boyer wanted to kneel. He wanted to sit.
He wanted to sit, and then he listened to Boyer, and Boyer told him to kneel, and he adhered. So that's just my thought. I don't feel like to say that he's protesting the country is a fair assessment.
I don't think I said that. Oh, he's protesting. I said he's protesting the flag.
Yeah, I think he meant, or I think he went in, or.
I'm sorry. Maybe I
Anyway.
misunderstood.
Can I go?
Yeah.
So-
what you got, Jim?
There's a couple things here, and I'm just going to say these questions and statements on these things. So, Eden, you said something about the police and moving, or in basically with police brutality, where's the end goal in that, or how do we move forward with that? One thing I'll just say is just discipline for that, just a consequence. There's been how many unarmed killings or murders at the hand of police in how many different ways? I think the
8, 13, and 7.
Yeah, that's right, Mr. Facts Guy. But the point is that that's happening, and there's been limited discipline for these police officers, and it feels like that there's no justice being served in that. And then we're talking about protesting America, protesting racism, protesting this, protesting that. Going back to the original question, what protest is effective? I almost think that when you're protesting something, it's usually led by somebody who's a minority or who doesn't have a big voice, which means you're immediately outnumbered and you have a huge disadvantage because the rest of the people, Americans, believe that everything is okay or still going in the right direction or that we're improving, which I will not say that we're not going in a better direction. There's just some things that we probably have to address, some major things like racism, discrimination, and police brutality that we have to address as we continue forward and not saving a whale. You know what I mean? I'm just coming up with something, but you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Another thing is going back to the original deal of what protest is effective if it's led by a minority or somebody with a smaller voice or not as big of a voice as the leaders have who basically can provide support for that protest and also can beat the media, which the media is led by another agenda as well, which is typically not supporting the protest.
Mm-hmm.
And again, remember the protest, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's effective or not, the original protest, the reason for it was for us to say police brutality and all, of course, the other stuff that he said in there. Mm-hmm. But what sticks out to me is just a straight up, hey, police brutality, which is not specified to a minority group or black people. Mm-hmm. Because I feel all police brutality is wrong. If it's against white, black, whoever.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's on the rise?
Police brutality?
Yes.
No.
But do you think maybe just awareness of it is on the rise?
Yes.
And not awareness in
Correct.
terms, yeah.
Right. Which is of course portrayed by the media and the way that we are now able to push out these things.
Well, and because when you're talking about protests being led by minorities and challenging the institutions of power, that is truly why research has to be done and approaches have to be planned to make it effective. Because in this country, you change laws with a majority vote. And so how do we get a majority of people to become more aware of this, to mobilize enough of the population to change it? So, I mean, I think the next slide we talk about appropriateness, and that might be more of the place for some of this, but this slide about effectiveness, I feel like this movement is going in the direction of getting a majority of the population to want to support change.
What is our next slide?
Eden, we just touched on,
Gotcha.
is going to evaluate the appropriateness.
I just want to say one thing before we go to the next deal, and that's just to leave a question for everybody out there, for everybody listening as well. Alex, you brought up a good point. Hey, Kaepernick is no Martin Luther King. I am not a Martin Luther King, although I'm inspired to be. But I guess what we're looking for here is the next Martin Luther King Jr.?
No, we're looking for
we don't have an answer, and you can answer and lead into your next slide if you want, Eden. But that's what I want to get out of here, because if you're telling me that Martin Luther King set the example for the most effective, best way to protest what is going wrong, and we all have said police brutality is wrong, hate and discrimination is wrong, and that we need to be better as Americans, so therefore we are living in a country that is all inclusive, as opposed to basically an educational system, judicial system, and all these other institutions that have not been very supportive of minorities.
I wasn't saying just Martin Luther King. There's been plenty of other good peaceful protesters, Gandhi out there, things like that.
But Martin Luther King right now, everybody can relate to Martin Luther King. Everybody can see that. Everybody knows that.
I'm not saying, we all aspire to be that. Let's not throw bricks through Starbucks windows, is I guess what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I would like to add real fast. I kind of agree with you guys in that the protest doesn't necessarily have like definitive goals or like the definitive endpoints. Mm-hmm. But what he meant to do was pretty much, he said, was to raise awareness. He didn't necessarily have, and this could be his flaws, he didn't have the next steps thought out, the solutions thought out. His whole thing was, he probably was very reactionary, was I just want to raise awareness. He was simply trying to sit and then realize that was wrong, and so he was just simply trying to kneel to raise awareness, to get people talking about it, to get the thought out there. And in that sense, it was effective, because I've spoken, leading up to this, I've spoken to a lot of people, and military people, non-military people, and I kind of asked two general questions: is what do you think of the kneeling protest, and do you know why he did the protest? And for the most part, everybody does get that it was about police brutality. Now, whether or not they believe that police brutality is going on kind of just shows their own thought process, how they were raised. The majority of white people I spoke to really took the stance of everyone gets treated poorly, and minorities took the stance that we can see white people talk back to the police, we can see white people pull out guns at the police officers and they don't get shot. Mm-hmm. There's a video from California like a week ago, I can't remember the name of it, but basically what happened is this guy stole a cop car, stole the cop's gun, drove around in the cop car, crashed it, and throughout that entire time, the cop never once tried to shoot at him. He was blatantly disrespecting the cop, blatantly attacking the cop. He stole the cop's car, and they just merely chased him down and arrested him. They didn't beat him, they didn't shoot him, they didn't abuse him in any way. They just arrested him. Now, if I was a person of color, people, minorities, like we wouldn't even think of trying to do that. Like talking to the cop in a wrong way, talking to the cop even with the wrong voice. You don't say yes sir, no sir. They'll think you're disrespecting them and you could get attacked. As a child, I was raised to kind of be wary of police, to watch how you talk to police, how you interact with police. I, as a child, would walk down the street and cops would pull over and ask me, what are you guys doing? And it would be me and my group of friends, like for no reason other than we were just walking. It didn't happen a lot, but those situations have happened to me.
All right, guys, we have to move on. Eden is going to discuss the appropriateness of using
Can you
this.
go to the next slide?
Sorry.
Oh,
If
sorry.
yeah.
I didn't know who was doing that.
The appropriate platforms for social protests.
So, the word appropriate is tough. Appropriate is subjective. It's one of the most value-laden and open to bias terms that exists in the English language. It really is.
How did that slip by?
So,
how did we let that slide?
No, but no, I like it because sometimes what is appropriate is clearly defined, but in a lot of situations, it's completely not verbalized. We don't talk about it. You just sort of know, right? And that depends. It varies by individual, by community, by state, by country. I mean, globally, what is appropriate is completely different to each one of us.
Yeah.
And we may, in our groups, be it whatever group it is, may align ourselves with that definition, but it is different for everybody. Protests, by definition, seek change. They are, by definition, disruptive. A protest that isn't disruptive can just be ignored by everybody, and then really what's the point? So it's almost like when you want to protest, you have to gradually go up the spectrum to get people's attention. If your first one is ignored, maybe you protest in a way that's a little bit more disruptive. And then if that's ignored, maybe you do something that's a little bit more disruptive. That's how we get to violence in protests. When efforts are made to actually engage in productive conversations, to bring the power brokers to the table, to talk about ways to change in a nonviolent manner, and then nothing ever happens, frustrations mount, and they're like, hey, maybe next time I'm going to punch you in the face to get your attention. When you talk about analogous arguments, I thought for a time that maybe Kaepernick led with that like haymaker to the face to rock people back, get their attention, and then maybe like, hey, now do you have the ability to calm down a little bit and actually see what I want to talk about? I think it's every person's right to decide what their definition of appropriate is, just like it's every person's right to choose how they protest in a nonviolent way. Myself, when I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about protesting the flag, we've talked about the flag being a symbol, and it represents a part of our identity to differing degrees for Americans. I myself am much more offended by acts that are taken toward individuals than I am acts taken toward a symbol. So when I thought about how offended am I by him kneeling against the flag, what offends me infinitely more is people who stand outside of abortion clinics and yell at women who go in there and call them murderers and whores. I don't want to talk about the subject of abortion, but that's a direct attack on a human being as opposed to an attack on a symbol that represents a part of a human being. So I read a lot of John Lewis leading up to this. John Lewis is a U.S. congressman from Georgia. He's a civil rights hero. And he talked about the problem is this, and this book was written in 1998, mind you. He talked about there's a lack of listening that's going on in America. It's a result of a polarizing media and the segmentation of our society. Everybody has an agenda and everybody has a platform. Everywhere you turn, TV, radio, internet, there are groups of experts who are shouting each other down and yelling over each other. None of these discussions go anywhere. And he had two quotes that I thought were really powerful that I want to end this with and open it up. One of them is, he said, it's almost as if the object is for people to stand behind the walls of stand behind our own walls and hurl bombs at each other and see who has the loudest bang. That seems to be what we're doing. Nobody's listening. The other thing he said, which I thought a lot about, is when opinions and information become ends in themselves rather than a means to an end, we need to stop and ask ourselves, what is the point? And then I thought, everybody has a right to an opinion. It doesn't mean your opinion is right. So maybe you should listen to what the other side says. So I think it's completely appropriate for Kaepernick to be doing what he's doing.
Nate, you up?
To weigh in?
Yeah.
Please.
I don't think you had a chance to talk last time.
Oh, well, last time there was nothing for me to say that hadn't already been said.
Right.
But yeah, no, I'm happy to weigh in on this. Again, he really kind of hit any point that I would have to make. So anything I would say would be just to reiterate his points. I think I'm going to yield to someone else in the room because my slide's coming up next. So, but I would like to reserve the right to step in case someone brings up a point that I'd like to comment on. But I'll yield to the rest of the room for now.
I only have a comment. So if anybody else has something like a question or something that needs to be addressed, I only just have a comment.
How I kind of like when I was thinking about this question, what is appropriate platform? Like I did actually go in and research like actual laws, and like with flag burning, that is completely legal. It was once outlawed, and the Supreme Court realized that flag burning, and I could tell this goes into kneeling for the flag, they was outlawed, but they eventually did realize that maybe that is a protected part of speech. It may make you feel something, it may make you angry, you may not care, but it's still protected. That's kind of the point that we've been saying is protest is when you protest, you're protesting something you feel strongly about, and you're trying to get other people to feel these emotions. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second there. So, do you have anything to say?
I have a question from somebody online. Is a quiet, polite protest, taking a knee, the best way to address police violence, or were people in Ferguson more effective by taking to the streets?
No, I don't think it's useful at all to riot, to loot, to destroy your own community. It's
right.
I mean, yes, it's understandable that people are mad. You can't deny someone's anger. But to riot and destroy property, no, that's never useful, especially when it's within their own community.
Right.
The people they hurt were the people were not people directly involved. It was useless. As far as peaceful protests go, you know what? Taking a knee, let's be honest. That's about as non-invasive as it gets. That was, the first instance of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. That was a man quietly expressing his opinions. Now, the platform in which it was expressed, that's debatable. It was done while he was essentially on the clock in front of millions of people, both in public and on TV. So now that's up for debate. Quietly protesting by taking a knee could have been a lot more effective than it has been. And the only reason why it wasn't really effective is because no one's really talking about why he was taking a knee. People went back to being divided and started pointing fingers and bringing up a whole bunch of points that had nothing to do with his point. So it could have been effective. It could have been appropriate. Unfortunately, it wasn't.
I really liked what Richard said about defining effectiveness. I mean, I think that the fact that we are sitting here talking, and who knows if this is being replicated in any other city or town anywhere, even just in people's living rooms amongst friends, the fact that we are here is evidence of its effectiveness. We are talking. And I think it's really about what do we expect out of it? Change. If I try to change something in my life, it's really hard and it takes a long time. And I struggle with it. So talking about macro level societal change when you're involving bureaucracy and government and culture, I mean, this is a long-term process. And what we do is we get individuals around the table talking, and we build relationships, and we talk about, we expand our minds. We learn other opinions. We become more tolerant. Then that branches out to other people in our groups. And eventually, over a long period of time, hopefully we hit critical mass and there's enough people where we can make change. So in that sense, I think it's pretty effective.
So here's what I have to say about addressing what majority of all of us are saying, and Nate just said it recently as well, is that kneeling is one of the best ways to protest. It just so happened to be on TV and happened to be while he's on the clock. And I don't really know what that means, Nate, other than he has a job and he's protesting while he's at a job.
Well, you protest while you were clocked in at G?
I think that it is. I think that goes back to my point.
Yeah.
I think that is a different argument because we as employees, we don't sign a contract. We are not partners unless you're an actual partner in like a law firm or something.
You do sign a contract.
Yeah.
No,
we sign
you're
a contract.
if you're a contractor of any sort, it's the same concept. My point is that the platform in which he decided to protest, that's what's debatable. The taking a knee, if we're just being honest, not that big of a deal. The platform, the way in which he decided to make his opinions heard, that's what's rubbing people the wrong way.
Right, and that's go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say again, the fact is that Colin Kaepernick and everyone else in the NFL are paid entertainers. Okay, Colin Kaepernick was at work. None of us can go into our job and make a bold statement like that without seeing some serious repercussions. Okay, it's the same thing. So, but I'm not trying to make a firm point. All I'm saying is that choosing to do that while at a public game, that's what sparked this whole I mean, that's the debatable part. Not the taking a knee. That's not a big deal.
I know, good call. No, go ahead. No. I wrote mine down, so we're going to talk about it at some point. I don't care if it's after or not. But we're going to talk about it sometime.
We have 2 minutes, 43 seconds.
Go ahead, E.
No, not me.
He can't talk. He has to wait.
No, mine would open up a whole new can of worms because I wanted to talk about what it's got.
All right.
I do disagree with you in that we are the same type of employees as these professional athletes. We do not bring in the same type of revenue and power that these professional athletes bring in. The reason why there is national football is because these individuals play the game. These people who own the teams, what do they really do other than way back 20 years, 30 years ago, they were bought an entity. They may have helped with business development, but what drew the sport were the players. That field is their platform, and that is something that Kaepernick did speak about. He is speaking and using his platform for people who do not have a platform, for the voiceless, for the people who are abused daily. Like Rodney King happened how many years ago? Yet people still will not think that police brutality happened. That was in the 90s, early 90s.
Did those police ever receive discipline? I can't remember.
No, they didn't. They got off completely.
1992.
Yeah.
A lot of these cops that do kill someone or have some type of brutality against their record do usually get off. Some get fired, but very rarely do they ever actually have. I don't even know if it really does ever happen that they actually get persecuted. They get fired, but they never actually serve jail time.
Well, they might get persecuted, but they don't get prosecuted.
Yeah, they never get prosecuted yet.
You're talking that bit, Alex.
I am.
What you got?
Yeah, you
30
should,
seconds,
you should
Alex.
see him, Nate.
I think I have a problem with the generalities that we speak in. A lot of these people, a lot of these cops. I would really like to examine on a case-by-case basis because I feel like on a macro level we see a shooting from a helicopter and we don't know the circumstances till afterwards that the driver was on PCP or things like this. And I feel like we instantly have a reaction and it affirms our belief in something in this system. And it becomes just, that's instantly what we believe. Like nobody went back and examined the Michael Bennett case after his story was basically debunked from like 193 different camera angles. a 45-second delay, but everything else, the cops were very cordial to him. And I think that we can keep speaking these generalities, but until we examine them on a case-by-case basis, like when the Rams players walked out with the T-shirts that said "Hands up, don't shoot," that was a very specific point that they had to bring in this generality and what is appropriate. That's the best, most appropriate. Is it the most appropriate? No. But is it not appropriate? I don't think so either. I think it's appropriate, just like Nate said, like more appropriate than Ferguson, but at the same time they are employees, and when it's become so blurred lines like it has, and it's become political, you can debate whether it's become political or not, but I think it's become political, and when half the country feels one way and half the country feels another way, and it's become a political statement, you're going to alienate half your audience that you're trying to make a statement to.
And that's what leads me to what I was going to say. It seems like every angle somebody feels disrespected. Every angle. Somebody is disrespected one way or another. You kneel. I'm disrespected because you're kneeling during the national anthem. I protest. Oh, you're disrespecting businesses of corporate businesses or whatever. You know, whatever it may be. Like, everyone's disrespected one way or another.
We need to learn how to tolerate it, because being disrespected doesn't mean you don't listen. So we disrespect. All of us get disrespected at various points. Some of us more than others, but we all suffer with it. It doesn't mean you can shut people out. You have to learn how to deal with being disrespected and so move forward.
Right. So, and I know we're at a time, but so I'm gonna say this because I know. I'm just gonna write it down. This will be for next. This will be for next session. I'll just write it down.
I'm crying over here because
go ahead.
we have to tolerate the intolerable now.
No, what I'm talking about is in conversation. So I'm saying your opinion. I feel disrespected because of what you did, so I'm not going to listen to you.
Okay, yeah, no.
That's what I'm saying. Is we have to get past that. Like, I'm not going to shut you out and disengage because I feel disrespected. Like, it's about excuse, really.
One thing, just real fast, you were speaking about we actually take these cases and look at them. There are a lot of, it is hard, we do look at these cases, and like Rodney King, we looked at that case. Those police officers blatantly beat this man, and they got no prison time. I don't even know if they got fired from their job.
Just discipline. It doesn't have to be
discipline.
Just discipline. And so nobody does it again. I mean, that's the consequence of wrong action. You receive bad consequences. And so therefore, it impacts the next person who thinks about doing wrong.
Since Rodney King, do you think that police brutality has gotten better or worse or the same?
I don't know. Either way, I think I see your point. So since Rodney King,
did they get off? Maybe they did, but where are we at now?
Police still getting off.
Police still getting off
at the same rate.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know the rate, but we are seeing police still receive no discipline for doing wrong.
They can get fired or released.
I mean, you're telling me just because it was 20% then and it's 10% now that I should not be upset that 10% are still getting off or abusing their power?
No, that's what I'm saying.
I think things are getting a little heated, gentlemen. I think we need to just cool it off right here. I'm sorry to step in, moderator, but I think this would be a good time to just to move on and cool the emotions a little bit.
We have actually also run out of time on that slide, so we're going to move on to the next slide. Nate is going to discuss: is kneeling protected within Americans' right to free speech? A professional athlete's free speech, and I think we've touched on this, but go ahead, Nate, please.
We have touched on it a bit, but the points I have to make are a little different. So I'll answer this question by first making a blanket statement and then defending it with 4 main points. Okay, so talking about the First Amendment and the right to free speech is sourced within the First Amendment of the Constitution, and reads as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. End of amendment. Okay? So, what that means is we as American citizens, including professional athletes, have a right to free speech. Under that right to free speech, what that means is we are protected from being arrested for the things we say. We're protected from the government from being arrested for what comes out of our mouth. That's it. That being said, this no longer becomes a discussion about our right to free speech. Because, yes, Colin Kaepernick has a right to free speech, but that just protects him from the government taking him away in chains. There is nothing in the First Amendment that says that his boss can't be upset and penalize him for acting outside of his contract. So, I'm going to make my points. First point is that the NFL is a private entity that can penalize its employees for acting outside of their contract. Okay? Colin Kaepernick did not have a contract laid out for him in the future, and he made a choice to make his position as a backup quarterback political. That all of a sudden made him a pariah and a liability. Now, NFL as a business, when deciding whether or not to rehire him as an employee, has to run a very simple cost-benefit analysis. What's the cost-benefit analysis of hiring a person like Colin Kaepernick? Well, he's a backup player, and he now has this baggage that we have to decide whether or not we are going to deal with. NFL's main goal is to make money. That's it. Now, they get involved in political things here and there with special colored jerseys and gloves and cleats, but their main goal is to make money. So it was broke down to, no, Colin Kaepernick wasn't worth the trouble. Done. But so Colin Kaepernick exercised his right to free speech. With that right comes responsibility. We have responsibility if we're going to maintain this right to free speech. That responsibility not only means that we have to be well informed with our speech and not just clear and we can't just speak clearly and with conviction. We also have a responsibility to speak up when we see something that is wrong. Speak up when we're outnumbered. Now, Colin Kaepernick did that. He took responsibility for his actions. It's our duty as an American citizens, if we are going to continue this idea of the United States, we have to speak. It's not just a value. Our right to free speech is a critical mechanism in how our country operates. So it is our obligation to speak up and speak our minds, because when we speak, ideas come from our speech. Good ideas come from our speech. Now, with that responsibility also comes an inherent risk. There's a risk to everything you say, and sometimes, that risk is that it might not fall on friendly ears, the things you have to say. But going back to our responsibility, it's still our responsibility to take that risk, knowing that we may not be heard, we might be misheard, we might be alienated or persecuted for the things we say. That's a risk. And because there is a risk, there are consequences for the things we say. Colin Kaepernick is an American citizen. Colin Kaepernick was an employee of the NFL. And while he did have a right as an American citizen to speak freely, the consequence of his speech from his employers was that he's not going to get rehired as a football player. The consequence of Colin saying what he said was that 50% of the American people turned against him. Now, 50% of the American people are supporting him, but there's always that risk that comes from our responsibility, that there's going to be a consequence, negative or positive. So, to summarize, yes, we all have the right to free speech, and we have a responsibility to uphold our right to free speech and use it often. With that responsibility comes a risk, and we have to uphold our responsibility in lieu of that risk, and we also have to accept whatever consequences might come our way, as long as no one's trying to hurt us. So I'll end there and open the floor.
Thank you, Nate.
So, I mean, Nate, I love your points about risk. That is probably the single thing I am most impressed with Colin Kaepernick on, is the risk he was willing to take and his commitment to his position regardless of what he has endured as a result of it, loss of employment. I do a lot of trainings on child abuse prevention, and we talk about risk, and sometimes you're going to have to step into situations that could alienate you or end friendships or end family relationships in order to keep the kids safe. He is doing so to raise awareness to an issue that he thinks is incredibly important, which is police brutality and the treatment of minorities in America by people in positions of authority. I agree. Taking those risks in conversations with friends, family, public, wherever, that is what we have to do in order to make effective change. One thing that I'm really, and I agree with your point about the private entity and your boss gets to set the rules for what you get to have to operate in, and then you get to make a choice as to what's going to happen. Yeah, I think what would be very interesting, because the NFL is a private, the owners get to set rules. A lot of stadiums are partially or fully taxpayer funded, so I would like to see maybe a stadium that's fully taxpayer funded decides, hey, if you want your team to play in our taxpayer funded stadium, then your players can kneel or stand if they want to. What do you think about that? Go build your own stadium then. I think that's, now that owners are talking about implementing these rules, I think that is something that could happen. I kind of like to see it happen. How does that play out?
I think it's just still crazy to me to say that here we are addressing this, it's a kneeling, and all I want to do is go back to trying to make America better for us and our future and the next generation. Like, we're putting a Band-Aid on it by doing some of these things. And I think by saying, oh, well, taxpayers own the stadium, go build your own stadium. They're going to go, Jay Jones, I'll go build my own stadium, and I'm going to make everybody stand. Screw you and your stadium, and screw you and your protests, and screw you and your police brutality.
Well, then police brutality, then we should, the police aren't where we need to talk about. So police agencies enforce their own rules. Like Richard said earlier, they might get fired or disciplined. The police department doesn't prosecute, so why aren't the officers being prosecuted? You need to look
because
at
of a prosecutor.
But you need to look at grand juries. So the prosecutor takes it to a grand jury, and the people in the grand jury who are made up of U.S. citizens a lot of times decide whether to move forward. So why are they deciding elsewise? Is it based off of the evidence? Is it based off of their biases? What is it based off of? And the prosecutors are part of it. Maybe, I don't know enough about different jurisdictions to know, maybe in some offenses they don't go to grand jury. Maybe it's just prosecutor's discretion. So then why is that? So we need to look at the criminal justice system as a whole and its process, because the police are one part of it.
Yes, I fully agree with that.
I don't think Jerry Jones was saying screw you and your police
brutality. No. That was just an example. I didn't say he said that. He built that stadium a long time ago.
Right. And I don't think that's what he's saying when he's saying, I want you to stand for the national anthem. I think he's saying it's a business, and he sees the...
Can we touch on the fact that this wasn't a thing until just recently? That they weren't coming out and even there for the anthem until just recently. And what was behind that? Why did that start?
It was funded by the United States government as a means to recruit into the military.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought what you said, Nick, was great. I mean, it's true. I mean, you have a choice. You go work for a place, like you said. I can't go into ATG sporting whatever I'm trying to protest. You know what I mean? Because I signed whatever I signed. I don't even remember what I signed. But if my employment contract said, J-Town, you can't protest, then I can't protest. Or there's certain ways I can't protest, right? We have those choices, and that's what brings me back to these things. I have a fundamental choice to say, I want to be a part of this panel because I want to get better. I want to grow. Eden, I want to hear your perspective of life and why you do the things you do and the way you do those things. Alex, same for you. Same for everyone. Same for you, Nate. Why do you do what you do? Why do you want to be a better person? Why don't you like police brutality? Why do you feel America's great? Why do you feel America's not so great? Why do you put so much stock in the flag? Like, these are questions that I want to get down to, because that will help us grow and help us define who we want to be, so we could be the Americans that we want to be and set it up for the next generation so we can be better and not have to worry about police brutality and hate and discrimination and racism.
And that happens, I agree completely, that happens in individual relationships. So it happens with us when we talk. What I'm hoping is we leave and we go to other relationships we have, and it happens in those discussions. And maybe the people listening, this will prompt them to have those discussions with their people. That's how it happens, micro level to macro level. I agree with you completely. And so I hope that these discussions continue in this forum, outside of this forum, when we're playing ball. I hope some people who are watching want to get in on the next one, either online, stay tuned in, be a part of it. I hope more so that they go out to their people wherever they are and have these discussions, because that's what's going to change. And then they go locally to their representatives, to their city council. Hey, what's the deal with my city prosecutor? This event happened in my city and nothing was done. Why is that?
And how do I change it? Effectively, on the right platform, without disrespecting somebody, which is like my grandest question. Like, how do you not disrespect somebody when you feel something is wrong and they could feel something is okay?
Because if you disrespect me, I'm not listening.
Exactly. So I think we got some great stuff for next time. I'm not trying to wrap it up or anything, but I mean, if somebody else has something to say, I know this is our last question, but
Jayton, you got me pretty amped up with that passionate rant you went on. I wish I could high five you right now.
Anybody have anything before we close out? Richard?
I don't think there's a better way to end it than Jayton ended it very well.
Yeah.
I think that is the point of this, is that we are trying to build better communities. We're trying to build a better future for our children or our nieces, nephews, or whatever else it may be. It's about just plainly being better, about being for one another, about growing.
Well, I've been watching the posts on the Be Polite Don't Tailgate page as people are commenting as we're speaking. It's been really interesting, and so for all the people listening, I'd really like to extend a heartfelt thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for asking as we're talking, and thank you for engaging with me and keeping me honest. This has been a lot of fun, and I think this has been really positive. I hope that it's twice as big next time. Everybody listening, tell your friends and tell them to tell their friends.
You got anything, Alex?
No, I was interested to see what the posts were.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. You want to wrap it up, Bob?
Hey, I want to thank all of you, the panelists, for putting some really serious thought into your slides and where you're coming from. And just thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for moderating, by the way.
Yeah.
I know
Thank you for moderating. You did a wonderful job.
You did do a great job.
Well,
Thank you.
I've never done such a thing in my life, but this has been really, I do believe it has been a positive experience. It's been a positive experience, I think, for all of us, and it's been good to really dig deep, look inside, and next time, I'm excited next time already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, thank you.
Thank you.